So, January's ending, and in my last video I said that I was maybe going to do a my favourite wrestling matches of the month type feature, and that's exactly what's happening now. This is going to be a lot less restrictive than the last list. The only rule that I am abiding by is that it has to have been the first time that I watched the match this month. So there are 10 matches on the list from any promotion, any year. I just have to have seen it for the first time ever in January 2025. So without further ado, let's get to it. Number 10, Samoa Joe versus Nick Wayne on AEW Collision Homecoming. I love Samoa Joe more than anything. That's just a fact in my life that you all have to deal with now. I have been impatiently waiting for his return to AEW ever since the moment that he left, and it finally happened. He's back, and his first match back was against Nick Wayne on AEW Collision. Something I truly love about Samoa Joe, among many, many things, is his sense of comedy in matches. He's a credible threat, obviously. You only need to look at him to see that, to absolutely anyone they set foot in the ring with. But he doesn't let that stop him from making jokes, which some people do. And often it says taunts to his opponents, and it works very well in the opening to this match, where Nick Wayne is foolishly trying to shoulder tackle Joe, and Joe continuously mocks him for it. Nick Wayne was the perfect opponent for Samoa Joe's return, in my opinion. Like, he's a man in a faction that is equal parts an overbearing threat and also a family of jokesters. And he got a surprisingly decent amount of offense in. And Joe's just at his best when he's up against guys he can ragdoll around, the Darby Allins of the world. And it's clearly apparent here, but unlike Darby, who just sort of takes all of the punishment all of the time, Nick retaliated and fought, and even if it meant resorting to cheating. And it was a really good showing from both men. Helped massively by surprisingly little interference from the patriarchy. Too much interference is one of my pet peeves in wrestling, although I get that that's just personal preference. This doesn't get to be higher on the list because Nick Wayne is usually a high flyer and Samoa Joe didn't get to do his walkaway spot. So, sorry about that. Maybe I'm kidding, but only a little bit. Number 9, Mercedes Moné versus Mina Shirakawa at New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Dynasty. Mina Shirakawa, I was unfamiliar with your game, I'll be honest. I've only ever seen her wrestle in a few bouts in AEW where she was always good, but this was the first time that I could see how truly great she was. She is. Continues to be. It's often been said that there are 2 female wrestlers on the AEW roster that if you were to compete against them would make you look like an absolute star. That is Chris Statlander and Mercedes Moné. And with every Mercedes match that I watch, that statement seems to get truer and truer. I love when women have hard-hitting matches where they just beat the piss out of each other, I'll be honest. And Mina Shirakawa is such a formidable striker that she makes the beatings look tough, whilst also maintaining the hyper-feminine glamour that she's pretty much synonymous with at this point. The whole match was in the palm of her hand. She controlled not just the beatings, but also the pacing. And she just looked like a fucking star. Like someone who'd more than earned her spot in the Tokyo Dome. She was aggressive, but also very calculated, targeting Mercedes' knee throughout the entire match. I'm not usually a fan of that style of wrestling, just focusing on one body part and breaking it down. But she did a phenomenal job at it, and Mercedes did a phenomenal job at selling it, that it just worked wonders throughout the whole match. It really felt like Mina had done her research and was as ready as she could be to be the next TBS champion. Mercedes Moné is the best in the world. At this point, it feels pretty much undeniable, not just in the moves themselves, but in her selling and just in the way that she elevates everyone that she fights with. She's just the best. I'm so intrigued as to whom she's eventually going to lose her championships to, because right now she really feels unstoppable, and I can't imagine a single person that could knock her off that top spot, but we'll see. Number 8, Hurt Syndicate versus The Acclaimed on AEW Dynamite. I love watching wrestlers get manhandled and thrown like ragdolls. In case you couldn't guess, part of the reason why Samoa Joe is one of my favourites. And it's also part of the reason why I will always enjoy a Shelton Benjamin match. This match has enough physical aggression to satisfy anyone, but it's the melodrama, the rising tension between Anthony Bowens and Max Caster that really makes this match juicy. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Max Caster takes punishment like an absolute champ, and because he's such a little shit, affectionately, he makes it enjoyable, almost cathartic, to watch. Bowens doesn't get to do much in this match, but that's also the point. Max's ego is clamouring for the spotlight, surprise, surprise, just for that chance to prove that he really is the best wrestler alive. And Anthony Bowens, being the good friend that he is more than willing to give him that opportunity by jumping off the ring apron and being too far away to accept a tag. The Hurt Syndicate are a force to be reckoned with, and you'd have a hard time taking them down as a team, so of course Max can't beat them solo, and he gets absolutely bodied by both Benjamin and Lashley before he taps out to the Hurt Lock. There's so much enjoyment in the punishment, and that's why the Hurt Syndicate, both individually and as a tag team, are always so much fun to watch. I'm so happy that they're AEW tag champs. Hopefully we can fix the tag division now and focus on it a bit more. Just saying, Tony Khan. These are peak athletes living up to their catchphrase, "We hurt people," and I hope we continue watching them do it for years to come. Number 7, Shingo Takagi and Yota Tsuji versus Konosuke Takeshita and Jack Perry at New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Style Evolved 2024. I never thought that I would see Scapegoat Jack Perry teaming with Konosuke Takeshita, but here we are in a match that actually happened. And let me tell you, their dynamic is so much fun. Like, surprisingly so. I didn't know what to expect going into this match, but it's so much fun. Like, from the way that Jack continuously tags to Takeshita without Takeshita asking to be tagged, to the silly little facial expressions and gestures that he pulls to try and show that he means no animosity towards Takeshita and does not want to fight him. And then Takeshita retaliating by hitting Jack extra hard during his tags. It's simple, but it's incredibly effective in putting across the fact that these two guys have no affiliation with each other. And when that's contrasted with like the smoothness of the teamwork from Yota Tsuji and Shingo Takagi, who are both members of the faction known as LIJ in New Japan, it makes for a very interesting and intriguing matchup. My favourite tag matches are where the dynamic between the two teams are drastically different. Like in this match, where one is clearly a tag team, one is clearly two guys put together. I think tag matches are more exciting when the dynamic is completely different, and I think that's part of what makes this match so good. Takeshita and Takagi are both absolute beasts. They're seemingly incapable of absorbing an infinite amount of punishment and still being able to keep swinging. And they're a joy to watch together. Though I do actually think that I enjoyed this tag match more than their singles match that followed at Wrestle Kingdom 19 just a few weeks later. Takeshita only did one German suplex in this match, so I'm docking marks off for that. But the one he did was a thing of pure beauty, of course, because it's Takeshita. Currently, Jack Perry's not really on AEW TV. There's so many wrestlers, there's only so much time. I get it. He was featured a lot mid last year. That's fine. But I would love him when he comes back to bring this slightly more comedic energy, because he's really good at it. I realise I may be biased as one of the few people with a genuine love for Hollywood Jack Perry. Like, the funeral that he held for the FTW title still makes me smile whenever I think about it. But AEW is missing some of that silliness, and he proves in this match that he can really do that and do that well. But also, if he comes back as the most evil menace that ever menaced, I would also be very happy. I realise I've not really mentioned Yota Tsuji much, and unfortunately I do think he gets a bit overshadowed by his counterparts, but in no way does he let the match down, and he takes the pin like a fucking champ. It was just clear from pretty much the get-go of this match that it was more about Takeshita versus Takagi, given that not one but two championships would be on the line at Wrestle Kingdom 19, and that's the more important story to get across. But, light spoiler alert, I'll be talking about a Yota Tsuji match in a little bit, where he absolutely sings and shows off his true capabilities as the star that he is in his own right. So don't feel too bad for him for not getting much of a mention in this one. He will get a mention later. Number 6, Junior Benito versus McRae Martin at Mystery Wrestling 2. One of my favourite tropes in all of wrestling is these two opponents know each other so well that it makes it difficult for either of them to mount a strong offence. And the perfect example can be found between Junior Benito and McRae Martin on Mystery Wrestling 2. Benito and Martin are tag team partners in a team known as Fresh Air, and they were also both trained by Mystery Wrestling's own Evil Uno, so they know the counters to the counters to the counters of their opponent's move and can execute them perfectly. This match had big shoes to fill, going immediately after an inflatable death match, a match where a hot dog and a Sasquatch wrestled and all the weapons were inflatable, a match where Evil Uno himself said on commentary once it was over, "I feel so stupid, I should have made this the main event." So yeah, very big shoes. But Junior Benito and McRae Martin did an absolutely phenomenal job together. Benito is one of the smoothest movers I've ever seen. Like, maybe it's just me, but I get a real Swerve Strickland vibe from his movement style in like the best way. And McRae Martin is super speedy and a great mover in his own right, especially for a guy his size, because he's very, very tall. And they just have an incredible chemistry. It's easy to see how these two became such an exciting tag team that found success on the independent scene. As of time of recording, they are currently the IWTV Independent Wrestling Tag Team Champions. And the match was infinitely improved by commentary, with Evil Uno exclaiming several times, "That's my son," in a way that felt so genuinely supportive and endearing. It's clear that he's passionate about his students, and they really made him proud in this match. If you like your wrestling matches with a little bit of dancing and a little bit of ass smacking, this is the match for you. And it's just such an amazing showing for both of them. Number 5, Hounds of Hell versus Gates of Agony at AEW Collision Homecoming. Second match from AEW Collision Homecoming. It was a phenomenal Collision, the best ever. But I will say, when this match was announced, I was immediately excited anyway. And then concerned. Concerned because I am a huge Gates of Agony fan. It's part of where my initial excitement came from. And especially because it's been a while since we've seen them on AEW TV. But this match is like technically the debut of the Hounds of Hell, despite having seen Brody King and Buddy Matthews team up many times before under the umbrella of, the House of Black. So I was worried that since it's a debut, that the Hounds of Hell would just run through Gates of Agony in like a dominant and quite short performance. But oh boy, should I have never worried in the first place. Gates of Agony were really given every opportunity to shine, and they used every single one of them, having huge portions of the match where they were the dominant force and making the Hounds of Hell have to fight ridiculously hard for their victory. The tweaks in presentation between House of Black and Hounds of Hell are so interesting as well. Like, from the change in the Titantron to the gorgeous new logo that depicts Cerberus, like the 3-headed hellhound, to even like the slight switch in ring gear to the silver and red design. Like, they feel weirdly more cohesive than they ever did before. This is a hard-hitting, hard-fought fight, and Bishop Khan and Toa Leona were allowed the time to really show everyone who isn't watching Ring of Honor what they're missing out on week after week. And I think I need to renew my Honor Club subscription. Number 4, Sasha Banks versus Bayley at WWE NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. I had never watched a WWE show before, but with their new TV rights deal going to Netflix, I decided that there'd never been a better time to check them out. If I'm paying for the subscription anyway, it's kind of almost like getting wrestling for free. Except obviously I'm not, because I'm paying for Netflix. But I was paying anyway, so you get what I mean. Everything feels free once you've already paid for it. Having said all that, I did cancel my Netflix subscription after we finished season 2 of Squid Game. So this is like the only WWE match that will appear on any of my lists this year. NXT TakeOver Brooklyn was the show that I chose to start out with. I'd heard a lot of good things about the old NXT takeovers, and Netflix used an image of Jushin Thunder Liger as the thumbnail for this one, so I immediately decided that this was the show for me. If there's one thing I've learned about myself, and I mentioned it earlier with the Mercedes Mina Shirakawa match, is that I really love watching women beat the shit out of each other. Consensually, in a wrestling ring, don't get it twisted. Sasha Banks and Bayley deliver on that front, in spades. I went into this match having no clue what the story was. I'd never even seen Bayley wrestle before, but the commentary team and the video package before the match did a stellar job of filling in the blanks. This was a pretty vicious bout between two incredible athletes that plays out kind of like a melodramatic teen drama, if the drama in question took place in front of a crowd of 15,000 people. But, you know, a bully pushes a happy-go-lucky girl until she snaps and hits back. There's truly nobody better than Sasha Banks when it comes to shit-talking her opponent in the ring. I'm a huge fan of Mercedes Moné's work since her debut in AEW. We've already talked about how amazing she is. She plays the villain so perfectly, and that sets up Bayley as this ultimate babyface, a role that she's naturally so well suited for with this cheery demeanour and jaunty ponytail that she has. It's fairly simple storytelling, but it's incredibly well executed. And I'm not ashamed to admit that when the four horsewomen all hugged at the end after Bayley's big victory, it got me a bit emotional, even though I had no idea about any of their stories going into this match. Wrestling's always at its best when it makes you truly feel things, and this match is just a great example of that. It got me tearing up at the end, and I don't even know most of these women. That's probably the best review you can have for a match. Number 3, Yota Tsuji versus David Finlay at New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom 19. I said that Yota Tsuji would be back later with a better showing, and here it is. I love a hard-hitting match. I love a match where both wrestlers are visibly exhausted and giving it everything they've got, and I love a match where wrestlers are punished for their hesitation. And all of that epitomises this match between David Finlay and Yota Tsuji at Wrestle Kingdom 19. I know that Yota Tsuji appeared on this list before, but I watched this match before I watched that match. I'd heard of the Bullet Club War Dogs leader, David Finlay, and I'd seen many a photo of Yota Tsuji's borderline creep smile, but I'd never seen them inside a wrestling ring until this match. And I think this was probably the perfect introduction to both of them. I often think wrestling matches are way better when you can't predict the results, because it's much easier to get immersed in the story beats, and I think this is a prime example of that. Not knowing who's actually going to walk away with the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship added so much intensity to this match that was already great. I highly recommend it if you're someone like me who likes matches to be unpredictable. Find wrestling promotions you're not familiar with and just watch random matches, especially title matches, so you can shut your brain off and just enjoy the action without trying to predict the ending. These two truly gave it everything they had, and it was a joy to see. I won't say more than that, because quite frankly I was too busy enjoying the match to take notes, but you should check it out if you get the chance. Number 2, Psycho Mike versus London Lightning for Mystery Wrestling 13. Mystery Wrestling has already appeared on this list, but it can't be understated that Mystery Wrestling is one of the greatest hidden gems of the wrestling scene, and Mystery Wrestling 13 was no different, as it hosted its first ever tournament to determine the inaugural Mystery Wrestling champion. On this card, which remained a mystery until the show began, although they did announce the lineup of the tournament, but not who was facing who, we saw Psycho Mike versus London Lightning in the semi-final of the tournament, and it was such a delightful match. Starting with London declaring that he had emailed Mike's mother to find out if Psycho was actually his first name, and his mother declaring that Psycho Mike was actually a good boy and producing a 10-foot list of good deeds that he had done, to a sweet hug that leads to a body slam, something that anyone who's familiar with Psycho Mike could have predicted would be the outcome of this. This match was just full of so many fun spots that ended with London Lightning tapping out during an onslaught of body slams, something that I've never seen anyone other than Psycho Mike be capable of doing. Both London Lightning and Psycho Mike are just so joyous to watch. London's incredibly charismatic, but also just legitimately a great wrestler. And Mike always knows how to toe the line between amazing comedy and making sure a match doesn't get stale in an effortless way that very few are capable of doing. I always look forward to both of their matches, and this match really demonstrated why. It's a great showcase for both of their skills. And number 1, Toru Yano versus Kenny Omega from the 2017 New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax. This is a match of pure delight. It's truly the only word to describe it. I have to admit, I'm not a big Kenny Omega girly. I can totally see the appeal, but when I started watching AEW in the summer of 2023, he wasn't in a big storyline that I cared about. Like, he was feuding with Don Callis, but I wasn't invested in that because I didn't know what their relationship was prior, because I hadn't been watching. And then before he could do anything to excite me, he was out with illness. But this version of Kenny Omega, 2017 Kenny Omega, won me over before the match had even begun, as he two-sweeted, you know that thing where they make the little llamas kiss. I don't know what they're actually meant to be, but you know. He did that with several members of the crowd, but he refused to do it with anyone spotting merchandise from wrestlers that he disapproved of, which I thought was very funny. And then fucking Yano came out. That was when I knew this match was going to be something special. It began with Yano insisting Omega accepted a gifted copy of his recently released DVD, I assume. And Omega constantly refusing until even the referee was like, take the gift. And Kenny eventually relented. The DVD, of course, was not as it seemed, and instead it was filled with a powder that temporarily blinded Kenny, leading him to almost giving a one-winged angel to the referee. And then the shenanigans continued. There was hair pulling, exposed turnbuckles on all 4 corners. At one point, both the wrestlers had their own ankles taped together and had to hop around the ring like 7-year-olds in a sack race. The whole thing was just a big celebration of comedy and wrestling. A lot of people take it upon themselves to look down at comedy wrestling, but it takes a truly immense amount of skill and timing to structure a match that makes people laugh out loud once, never mind managing to sustain that for 10 plus minutes without it feeling stale or repetitive. It's just delightful. It's delightful. I know it's only January, but I can honestly say that it is the best match that I've watched this year, and I absolutely implore anyone who hasn't seen it to go check it out, because I believe it's truly a masterpiece of professional wrestling. It is. People will disagree because it's funny. Those people can go to hell. Comedy wrestling is wrestling. It deserves its place. This is a masterpiece of a match. So those were my top 10 matches that I saw for the first time this month, and I will be back next month to talk about my favourite matches that I watched in February, so hopefully I will see you then. And if you're interested in any matches that didn't quite make the list, I actually keep a blog to review the matches I love as I watch them, so I will include the link to that in the video description. You can check it out if you are so inclined. But other than that, all I can say is I'll see you next month.